Welcome to Lesson 1, everybody. Anytime a family member or a friend asks me questions about their finances, they almost always want to learn how to make more money. It's natural, right? We have goals, and a lot of these goals require money. In the first minute or two of these conversations, I always ask one simple question in return. Are you regularly tracking your wealth and how it's changing? What's fascinating to me is that every time, almost on cue, I get a slightly confused look and then a quick question. How do I do that? Folks, I'm going to teach you the most important lesson about money that you'll ever learn. I guarantee that if you really want to be wealthy, you'll implement this knowledge every day for the rest of your life. The two concepts we are going to discuss in our first two lessons are net worth and net income. These may sound foreign right now, but they are not at all difficult to learn. To explain these concepts, I want you to imagine that over the next year, you want to improve your physical health. And in a year from now, you want to show someone like your parents, spouse, or even a friend that you are in fact healthier than today. In order to prove this, you first have to measure how healthy you are today. To do so, you'll probably go to a doctor and get a physical. Now, the doctor is going to run a lot of tests on you. Probably measure your weight, maybe take some blood, and ask a number of questions. This is an important step because how can you really prove that you're healthier in 1 year without knowing how healthy you are today? You didn't come here to think about going to the doctor. However, let's translate this concept to your financial health. How do you measure how healthy you are financially? One of the most important tests is to calculate your net worth. Your net worth equals your assets minus your liabilities. Let me repeat that once again. Your net worth equals your assets minus your liabilities. What's an asset? Well, generally speaking, an asset is anything you own and that has a measurable value. This also includes any amount someone else owes you today. Some examples of assets include a car, a house, cash, investments, and even collectibles. If you legally own these, they are your assets. If your friend owes you money, well, that's also an asset too. Okay, well then if an asset is anything I own, then what the heck is a liability? Well, you've probably heard the more common word for a liability, and that's debt. If an asset is anything you own, then a liability, also called debt, is any amount you owe. Some examples of liabilities include student loans, credit card debt, a mortgage, a car loan, or even if you owe a friend money. If you currently owe money today, then that amount is called a liability. Now, let's go back to our equation. Assets minus liabilities equals net worth. If you add up the value of everything you own and subtract the value of everything you owe, the difference is what you are worth financially. Say it with me one more time. What you own minus what you owe is what you are worth. Why is this such an important equation to learn? Easy. In order to build wealth, you first should know how to calculate your wealth. This simple equation tells us at a basic level there are only two ways to increase our wealth: increase our assets and decrease our debt. Now, let me be clear. Having debt isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes debt is a necessary and even smart component to building wealth. We'll talk more later about how debt works and how we can manage it effectively. The key lesson here is that increasing our net worth over the long term is literally what makes us wealthier. We should always keep this lesson in mind. When we list our assets, liabilities, and calculate our net worth on a piece of paper or maybe even in a spreadsheet, we create something called a personal balance sheet. This personal balance sheet is a major part of your own financial physical. You can make a personal balance sheet at any time. I think it's important to put one together at least once a year. If you want to track your wealth more often, you might consider doing one every 6 months or even every 3 months. There's no definite answer as to how often you should make a personal balance sheet. I'll leave that power up to you. But again, at least once a year is a good rule at a minimum. The first step to creating your personal balance sheet is easy. List all of your assets and liabilities. To help you get started, here are more examples of different types of assets and liabilities that you might have. If you're not sure if something is an asset or liability, feel free to reach out. But remember, if you legally own it today or someone owes you money today, then it's likely an asset. And if you legally owe it today, then it's probably a liability. Once you have all of your assets and liabilities listed, the next step is to assign a value to each. This leads us to another important question. How do I determine a value for everything that I have listed? Well, if it's an asset, a general rule is to use something called fair market value. Fair market value is just a fancy term that means the average price you would get if you sold the asset today. This might require some estimation and research for things like houses or cars, since these assets have distinct characteristics and might not sell every day. For instance, if you list your house for sale at a price of $500,000, but similar houses in your neighborhood have only recently sold for an average of $350,000, you likely have a $350,000 asset. $350,000 is the fair value, as this is what similar houses sell for currently on the market. Hence, fair market value. It's important to remember that someone can ask any price for an asset, but the market is only represented by what the asset or similar assets are actually selling for today or very recently. The focus here is not to be a valuation expert and feel like you need to have value estimated right down to the penny. Using the best information available is a reasonable way to measure how much your assets are worth. Liabilities are usually a lot easier to measure. Here, simply use the total amount you owe today, also called the total outstanding balance. This amount includes any unpaid interest and any unpaid penalties charged to date. Now, add up all of your asset values, subtract all of your liability values, and voila, you have your net worth. Always remember that your net worth is calculated at a point in time, and it changes regularly. One question I get a lot is, what happens if your liabilities are more than your assets? Well, folks, then you have a negative net worth. If this is the case for you, don't panic. A large majority of people start their careers with not much in assets and a lot of debt from things like student loans. The purpose of the net worth calculation is to perform a financial physical today, so you could chart your path to greater wealth in the future. In our next lesson, we're going to introduce the second important equation, and that's how to calculate net income. If net worth is our financial physical, then think of net income as how we measure the diet, the exercise, and all of the other things we do to improve our health going forward. That brings us to 2 homework assignments before you start lesson 2. First, create your own personal balance sheet listing all of your assets and liabilities today, either on paper or using a computer spreadsheet. Don't forget to write the date at the top so you know what point in time each statement relates to. Second, decide on a plan for how often you are going to update your personal balance sheet and set reminders on your calendar so you don't forget. Congratulations! You just completed the first step towards building your financial future. I am so excited to continue sharing with you all of the knowledge and tools I use to build my net worth. Go at your own pace. Take your time. What's most important is really understanding and implementing these concepts. If you have any questions at all, please email me at opusmonetequestions liabilities@gmail.com, or comment below and I will try my best to get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching. We rely heavily on recommendations. Please follow us on Instagram, subscribe to us, and like this video on YouTube, and share our program with your friends and family today. See you all in Lesson 2. Peace!